Frank was a billionaire. He owned the most luxurious restaurants across the country, places where the elite celebrated life, power, and success. His name was a symbol of perfection. His empire was built on excellence, discipline, and one simple promise: every single guest would be treated with dignity. But one night, Frank put on clothes he hadn't touched in 35 years. A torn jacket, worn-out shoes, stained pants. He stood in front of his penthouse mirror, barely recognizing the man staring back at him. Tonight, he wasn't a billionaire. Tonight, he was invisible. This drastic change was triggered a week earlier by a message that shook him to his core. An anonymous envelope had appeared, with no return address, inside a single flash drive. When he played the video, he saw a homeless man being brutally dragged across the gleaming marble floor of one of his finest restaurants. Customers watched, some even laughed, but no one bothered to help. As the video ended, a chilling sentence faded onto the screen. "Your empire has forgotten who you used to be." Frank couldn't sleep for days. Those words haunted him, because once upon a time, he had been that man on the floor. Now he had to know the truth. 35 years earlier, Frank had absolutely nothing. No home, no money, no one. He slept on sidewalks, using old newspapers as blankets to fight off the cold. Every night, hunger clawed at his stomach so violently he could barely think straight. He remembered, standing outside fancy restaurants, watching families enjoy meals he couldn't afford in a lifetime. One freezing night, desperation finally won over pride. He snuck behind a restaurant and began searching through the trash. He found leftovers, some cold steak, a half-eaten piece of bread. As he reached for it, the back door flew open. The owner came out. Frank froze, a flicker of hope in his eyes, praying for a moment of compassion. Instead, the man grabbed a pot of boiling water from the kitchen and threw it directly at him. Frank screamed as unbearable pain tore through his skin. People heard him, they saw him, but no one came. No one cared. Alone and shaking in agony, Frank made a solemn promise to himself. If he ever escaped poverty, he would never ever allow anyone to be treated with such cruelty again. He worked harder than anyone he knew. He took massive risks. He sacrificed everything. Years later, he had built an empire worth billions, but he never forgot the pain of that night. And now, he feared his own company had become the very monster he once hated. At exactly 7 p.m., Frank walked towards La Meridian restaurant, one of his most prestigious locations. Through the massive glass walls, crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow. Luxury cars lined the street, their owners stepping out in designer clothes. Taking a deep breath, Frank, now looking like just another man lost to the streets, pushed open the heavy oak door. He stepped inside, his heart pounding. The first test of his empire had just begun. Thanks for watching. If you want to see what happens next, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for part 2. Inside, wealthy guests laughed over $1,000 meals. Frank took a slow breath, then stepped inside. Conversations quieted. People stared. A woman covered her nose. A man whispered to his wife. Frank said nothing. He had felt this silence before. The hostess froze behind her podium, unsure what to do. Before she could speak, the manager appeared. Ricky Thornton, sharp suit, perfect hair, cold eyes. He forced a polite smile. "Sir," he said carefully, "this is a private establishment." Frank reached into his pocket and placed a thick stack of cash on the counter. Ricky hesitated. Money had its own language. "What would you like?" Ricky asked. Frank met his eyes calmly. "The Wagyu steak, the most expensive item on the menu." Ricky forced another smile. "Of course," but instead of seating him in the main dining area, Ricky led him to a small table near the kitchen. Hidden, isolated, unimportant. Frank sat down, quietly, watching, listening, waiting, because this was never about food. This was about truth. The waitress who saw him, Sonia Williams, had worked at La Meridian for 3 years. She noticed him immediately. Not because of his clothes, but because of the way others looked at him. She approached carefully. "Good evening," she said softly. Her voice held no disgust, no judgment, only kindness. Frank nodded. She handed him a menu, even though she knew he had already ordered. "Please let me know if you need anything." It was a simple sentence, but to Frank, it meant everything, because no one else had spoken to him like a human being all night. But behind the kitchen doors, something darker was unfolding. The decision that changed everything. Frank overheard Ricky whispering to the chef. She grabbed a small piece of paper and wrote 4 words. She stared at the note. This single decision could destroy her life or define it. She folded the paper tightly and walked back out. "Use the spoiled meat." The chef froze. That steak was left out too long. Ricky's voice hardened. "He won't know the difference." The chef hesitated. Ricky leaned closer. "He doesn't matter." Frank felt his chest tighten, not from fear, from disappointment. His worst fears were becoming reality, and he wasn't the only one who heard it. Sonia stood frozen nearby. Her hands trembled. She knew what the manager was doing. She knew it was wrong, but she also knew what speaking up would cost her: her job, her income, her daughter's security. She stepped into the restroom, locked the door, stared at herself in the mirror. Her heart pounded so loudly it echoed. "You won't want to miss it."